Good evening and welcome to the January, what is today, January 29th?
It is.
28th Board of Education meeting. Tonight is a special, not a special meeting, but a unique meeting, if you will, to start or to continue really more accurately, the budget input from the public now that we have a presentation from Dr. Freeman of a draft budget. I do want to start off by just noting a couple of items. One is that we have not made an appointment yet to the seat that Christine Cohen vacated when she was elected to the state Senate. We have continued to deliberate over the last couple of weeks. We interviewed 6 outstanding candidates, frankly, and the amount of time that we're taking is reflective of the quality of the candidates. So we continue to review materials, and we are going to meet tomorrow before the public meeting to talk about next steps. It may be possible that we could appoint somebody tomorrow. We could appoint somebody on February 4th when we have a scheduled meeting, or it could be not until February 11th. We do have 60 days under the law to make the appointment before it goes to the Board of Selectmen. I am quite confident that we will not be asking the Board of Selectmen to vote on this. But again, I think it's reflective really of the amount of interest that there was and the quality of the applicants. Moving on to the budget, Dr. Freeman is going to do a very, very truncated presentation because and it's really just to set the framework a little bit. This is not a night to hear really from the administration. It's really a night to hear from the public, and that is what we intend to do. After that, we'll open it up for comments. Our recording secretary has reminded me that it would be very helpful if you would put your name, print your name, right? Not sign. We don't need the signature, but just print your name on the pad so that on the pad on the lectern so that she can include it in the minutes. We are going to, as we always are, or always try to be, we're going to be reasonable in terms of time. We're not going to put any arbitrary limits on anybody, but I would just ask to be courteous. I'd urge people to keep in mind that there may be other people here who want to speak, and if you have something that's maybe a little lengthier, if you could just kind of reserve it and let other people go and then maybe and even come back up, that's fine. A couple of other just foundational issues. One is that we are very early, really, in the budget year. We start our budget process here earlier than many towns. By charter, we have to present the board or the budget to the Board of Finance relatively early. That creates some challenges, frankly, from the budgeting point of view. We're only 6 months into our current year's budget, and so we're going to be trying to predict expenses, including things like medical expenses, which is our second largest line in our budget, for the time period from starting 6 months from now, continuing through 18 months from now. So that presents some real budget issues for the purposes of planning. The other thing that starting this early does is we don't know what's going to happen in Hartford. For those of you who have been involved over the last couple of years, there have been some really scary proposals come out of Hartford, and we were trying to plan on dealing with those as best we could, and they wound up not being as scary as some people projected that they were going to be. But Hartford is facing a real issue right now with the teacher pensions that I started to say that the state solely funds teacher pensions, and in fact the state, I guess more accurately, inadequately funds teacher pensions. They have not set aside very much money, nowhere near enough money over the years, and there have been several proposals over the last 2 or 3 years to have towns pick up some of that share. The General Assembly actually increased the amount of teacher and administrator contributions to those pensions last year, which in effect was a pay cut, frankly, for administrators and teachers. So we don't know what they're going to do to us this year. If anything, they may not do anything, or they may give us some time. We don't know. You may have read that there was a proposal to pass a law to consolidate school districts for towns of less than 40,000. I have it on pretty solid information that bill is going nowhere. So I think that's not going to play any role at all in our budget consideration here. One thing we are going to try to be cognizant of, though, is all of the rest of the expenses. It's not just our operating budget, but all of the expenses that the town has incurred. And most notably, from our point of view, we try to take into account bonding payments and how much debt service is, because debt service payments are payments just like payments for the operating budget. They are obligations of the town. The difference is that we've already voted on those, and they have to happen. But we do want to try to take those into account when we're figuring out what we can do on an operating budget. The reason why that's important is that the debt service for the high school is going to continue to go up some this year and next year. Then it starts to drop, and then it continues to drop for the rest of the life of the bonds. So we are going to try to take those into account, but it is going to the debt service issue is going to begin to improve relatively quickly, and still the debt service was very substantially below what we had projected it was going to be when the high school project was approved. So I think that's all I really wanted to say. I would recognize that Chairman of the Board of Finance, Mike Ailes, is here. If you don't know him, frankly, their board is more important than our board in passing the final version of the budget. So we look forward to a thoughtful dialogue with them, and I'm grateful, obviously, and we're all grateful as we begin to put together a budget that reflects the values of our community and how deeply people in the community care about public education. And we're grateful for your support on budgets passed, and we are grateful that you came out this evening to talk to us about what you think we should do. So I asked Dr. Freeman to just give us the highlights, if you will, of what is in his proposed budget.
I will I'll make it very short. I will note for the community that this entire presentation was delivered to the Board of Education on January 14th, and if you want to see the entirety of the presentation, it would be available to you on GCTV. For tonight, Mr. Bloss, thank you. I will, just for purposes of starting the conversation, highlight essentially what is in this budget proposal and highlight a few items that are not in this budget proposal. I will not spend time going over the mission, the vision, the priorities for this school year, or the budget assumptions upon which this budget was built. But I will remind the community and the board that every year that we build a budget, we are not simply throwing out dollar figures and numbers. It is a values document. Specifically, this year, after several years of conversation, this year we know that the wellness, the physical and emotional wellness of our students rests at the heart of everything that we do. It has been a focus of this school year to help build resilience and to reduce stress levels for our students as we maintain high academic expectations for them. That has been a focus of this school year, will continue to be, and very much informed this budget build moving forward. Beyond our values, a budget every year is a reflection of our enrollment. We are projecting a decrease in student enrollment of about 60 students next year. When that number, however, is spread across 7 buildings and 13 grade levels, it essentially becomes statistically flat enrollment. I will note that for those interested, there is a demographic study available on our website that projected enrollment for the town of Guilford. And what we know is that enrollment in Guilford Public Schools is not decreasing as dramatically as it is in other similar towns, and it's not decreasing as rapidly as we projected several years ago when we engaged in this demographic study. The red line represents the study, the green line represents our actual enrollment. Built on all of that, the budget draft that the administrative team has placed before this Board of Education requests an annual budget for the 1920 school year of $60,963,831. This is an increase over the current fiscal year of $1,466,656, an increase of 2.47%. I said this last year, but I can say it again this year. This represents the lowest initial request that the administration has put in front of the Board of Education in my town, in the town. To show a history of those increases, what we're talking about historically, is that we had previously been talking about increases at 3.5% or 3% or 2.5%. And over the last 3 years, we've seen increases that are significantly smaller than that. And while we are asking for a 2.4% increase, we understand that this is our administrative request, that the Board of Education has not made any modifications, the Board of Finance has not made any reductions. We realize that this is the starting point, but I do want to talk a little bit about what is in that budget. Every year, we start by looking for areas where we can save monies. I will note that this year, salaries is identified as both an efficiency and a cost center. Salaries is identified as an efficiency because we are not asking for increased staffing at all this year. We're not asking for custodial increases, we're not asking for clerical increases, we're not asking for certified teacher increases. That doesn't mean that we don't expect to work harder, do more, and achieve more next year. It means that we're creative with the full-time equivalents that we have. We consider the human resources carefully, and we try to move our existing staff to where the needs exist before asking for increases. Medical benefits is a significant efficiency. In fact, we are down $500,000 over last year's medical spend. That in large part is credited to the work of this board in negotiations by changing the benefit structure for employees in the system, by offering buyouts, by moving to a high deductible system, and paired with some positive recent experience, we see a real positive there. And I need to commend every single teacher and principal in the school system because we have kept costs at the building level around things like supplies and materials down. We purchase what we know we need. We make sure our students have what they need, but we expect, quite honestly, frugal management. And we have worked hard and we have worked well to keep costs down at the local levels. A history of the medical spending, just to point that out a little bit further, from a high of $10.2 million down to a $1.4 million spend built in this year's budget. And I know I've been asked to go quickly, I won't leave this up long, but when you look at our budget by location, you will notice that the only area experiencing significant increase is the area of special education. That's due specifically to tuition, and I'll mention that a little bit further. The story of this budget can really be told with two numbers. While salaries, I believe, we manage and control, they also happen to be our largest single expense. Education is a people-intensive business. Salaries represent over 60% of our budget. When salaries represent that large a portion of your budget, small changes can lead to significant increases. Salaries are going up by over $1 million. They're projected to go up by $1 million in this budget. There are three significant reasons for that. One is that we are entering into the third year of a teacher contract. The third year in many negotiation cycles is often the most expensive year, and that is becoming evident in this year's salary increases. Teachers have had very small increases for the last 2 years of this contract. There's a slightly larger increase in this year's contract, but spread over our largest bargaining unit that has impact. Secondly, we're losing federal support. Mr. Bloss mentioned the difficult times in Hartford. We are also seeing reduced support in federal grants that had previously offset our salary expenses. Approximately $130,000 of that increase is due to us offsetting funds we had previously received from federal grants. And finally, an impact on this salary line is the fact that the history of increases that you've seen, the last 3 years of very small increases have required us to hire carefully. What that often means is that in certain subject areas, that means that I have imposed experience caps on principals when they hire teachers. So as we have hired less experienced teachers at the earlier stages of our salary scale, it means every year we have a larger portion of our staff members who are moving through our salary scale, both moving through the vertical steps, and by hiring less experienced teachers, they're often achieving additional degrees, and that has a cost associated in our contract as well. The second increase center is tuition. Tuition applies to special educational students for the most part, whose needs that we feel we cannot adequately meet in district. We therefore contract with other schools. We're seeing a significant increase in that line this year, again for 3 reasons. The first reason is changing needs of our students. That we have students who move into Guilford that we had not budgeted for. Mr. Bloss, you mentioned how early we prepare our budget. Any changes from now until next school year will be costs that were unbudgeted for. So when new students move to the community, when students who have been with us have emergent needs, we need to meet those needs, and this year that was impacted in more than one area. Additionally, we've lost state funding in tuition. The excess cost grant, where we used to receive offsetting dollars, has been reduced. The grant hasn't been reduced, but the portion that we have been approved for has been reduced. We're losing some dollars there. And we have seen a change of administration in the special education office. We're looking to account a little bit differently, and in correcting for some of those tuition accounting pieces, you'll see those three pieces come together to form that increase. These two items represent a $1.6 million increase. The whole budget's only going up $1.4 million. We're working very hard to offset these increases in every other area of the budget. That being said, we do intend that this budget will move us forward. We don't intend to just maintain what we're offering. However, the enhancements this year, the investments this year are minimal compared to past years. We are looking to increase the professional development line by a modest amount, but that is targeted towards two specific areas. We will be seeing a transition in leadership in our curriculum instruction and assessment office with Dr. Keene's retirement. Dr. Keene has been here for 20 years. I want to make sure that the person who moves into that office behind Dr. Keene has a professional development line that will support the work being done in that office. And so there's an increase in that office. But I think more importantly, and when this board met with our leadership team, you heard our principals talk about social emotional health and wellness in our schools, and we want to identify professional development, professional learning dollars to support our school counselors, our school social workers, our school psychologists in their work supporting your students in our classrooms. So there are additional dollars set aside there as well. We're very excited about a new club opportunity that we want to offer at the high school that will help to encourage student voice in the community, working on leadership skills and encouraging students at the high school to identify the areas that they're concerned about, the issues that they want to address, the civic areas that they want to move forward in their community, and allowing them to do that. So there are dollars for some teacher stipends as well as some travel and some materials to support that opportunity at the high school. All of that being said, I noted that there are some items not included in this draft budget that I know this board will want to address. Specifically, the most common request that we have heard during this budget season has been the request to increase art staffing at the elementary schools. We have heard a request for full-time art staffing at the elementary schools. That is currently not built into the budget. The $1 million increase in salary that I identified does not include new or additional art positions at the elementary schools. But I do want to be clear, as much as this is a budget item, this is also a time and schedule item for us. At this time, I do not feel comfortable increasing pull-out specific art contact time, because I don't know from where we would draw that from the rest of our elementary school day. I provided the board with an exhibit that notes that of all the DIRG A and B school districts in the state of Connecticut, we have the shortest elementary school day. And while I appreciate the comments that have been shared and the importance of art, I'm prepared to talk to you about ways that we believe we can better address the art standards and integrate the art standards into our classroom experiences, but we're going to need to talk about whether or not we increase art contact time. I do want to note that many of the comments noted that we are failing to meet state mandates for contact minutes. I want to be clear, state of Connecticut neither requires nor recommends specific contact minutes. They have not made a recommendation for minutes for more than 17 years because the state identified that in all the discrete subject areas, you couldn't meet their recommendations in a 6.5-hour school day. The only requirement from the state of Connecticut is that we address the identified art standards at each grade level. And again, we can have a conversation about how we can do that better and help students to feel that they have creative opportunities and meet those standards in their school day. We've had a lot of conversation this year about transportation in the school district. We worked hard at the beginning of the year to transition both to a new company and to new bell schedules. I want to note that this schedule does not include increased buses. I do not see any possibility of changing start times further or creating a more efficient busing program without adding buses. And I believe because of our neighborhood school structure, the minimum investment would be 4 buses. 1 bus when you have 4 neighborhood schools won't get us there. So that would be a significant component. This budget does not include dollars for a turf replacement on the original, our first turf field. We do believe that we have at least another year or 2 of life in the carpet that is currently there. And as I mentioned, tuition is always a volatile number. I know the Board of Finance often asks if we have enough contingency built into the tuition line. This tuition line, as in the past, is generally built on situations and tuitions that we know to be planning for. There's not a lot of contingency built in there. At the same time, I understand that 2.4% for a budget increase with the other impacts that Mr. Bloss noted, specifically the bonding increases that we're still going to experience this year. I've taken the liberty of identifying areas I think this board may want to discuss around reductions. The $1 million salary increase at this time does not include retirement savings. There's certainly room to talk about whether or not we will experience retirements this year, what subject areas those would be in, and would there be savings associated. In the last 3 budgets, we have built in an upfront retirement savings. There's a pension contribution that we make this year. It may not be as much as we have has been recommended, but it is above the status quo level. You could talk about the level of pension contribution that we are making. In past years, we have made end of budget year additional contributions there. The facility line currently increases, particularly in the area of improvement, by $100,000 this year. Working our way back to a level we had previously been at. There's certainly a discussion to be had about whether $100,000 is the right amount of increase there. Any reduction would simply be fewer projects that we get to. And just as I said, there's not a significant amount of contingency built into the tuition line, there is some contingency built into the tuition line. So we could talk about whether or not that requires an increase of dollars, a decrease of dollars, or whether we have it just right at this time. I will just quickly note that we anticipate a bonding request this year just for 1 year moving forward. We are looking at heating, ventilation, and cooling work that needs to be done at Cox. We're looking at window work that needs to be done at Melissa Jones, and it would be a bonding request for essentially $3 million. We are prepared to discuss a 2-year request for you, but it's a significantly larger amount, and we would recommend a 1-year request at this time. And I'll just wrap up by saying, while this may appear to be a conservative or modest budget, I continue to believe that the Guilford Public Schools is the best return on investment of any local school district in the state of Connecticut. When you look at any measure of performance, whether that be the experiences that students have in the classrooms, standardized test and state accountability measures, college placements, what we put on our athletic fields and on our performing stages, or the smiles that you see in the hallways, we are the best investment in an educational system in the state of Connecticut. That's the shortest I could make it, Mr. Bloss.
Okay, well, let's turn it over to the public then. Again, we just ask you if you just come up to the podium and give us your name, and be sure to print your name so that our recording secretary can read it. All right, who would like to go first? Somebody has to go first.
Hello. I don't know if everyone saw that artwork on the way walking in, because it was just really beautiful stuff hanging up. My name is Valerie Ferrucci. I live on Little Meadow Road. I have a 4th grader as well as a preschooler. I am here to support the addition of full-time art teachers at the elementary schools for the 2019-2020 proposed budget. This topic has been discussed for many years, and this year there has been a tremendous amount of support via meeting attendance, emails, as well as a petition. I am hopeful the board recognizes the community's desire for this change. I realize that time is the part of the issue here, and I've spoken about some different ideas about that, but you know, if the elementary schools had full-time art teachers, they could be doing integration. They could, maybe 10 minutes could be added, maybe 20 minutes could be added to the particular class without maybe having a whole nother 30 minutes as we've been requesting. That's all for today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you print your name? I'm sorry.
I also have a handout here as well.
Did you write your name down? I'm sorry, I wasn't watching. Thanks.
I
Okay.
didn't. I will. Thank you.
You got a pen. Donald Cottrell, 9 Garrison Drive. Good evening. I do have to say, as I follow this process more and more, I don't envy what you guys go through. It's a lot of work. I appreciate the presentation, and I think I understand a lot of the limitations you have on all these decisions, but that won't stop me from getting up and speaking a little bit in favor of full-time art at the elementary schools. I don't have much to show. That side's a little cleaner. It's one of the, I think art is one of the few times we allow our children to experience this, a blank sheet of paper. So I come at this a little bit differently, I think, than a lot of parents. I'm not necessarily looking at state guidelines. I don't even want to talk too much about creativity. I really want to talk about what you do with your life, what you do in the workplace, what you give back to the world. A lot of what we do to start our day in the working world is to decide what we're going to give. And a lot of times in math, arithmetic, you're presented with equations, science, history, you're learning about things that already happened. Art's one of the rare places you create from scratch. And then if you carry that into your working life, you can become quite successful. We generally don't talk about successes in industry like Apple laptops, iPods, the iPhone. We don't talk about them in terms of their processor speed. I'm going to challenge that one person probably in here at most could quote processor speed from an iPhone. But we sure will go on and on about how gorgeous it looks, how well it's designed. And that was all by design by Steve Jobs. Because he went into a calligraphy class one day in college just to audit it. Pretty much a form of art. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Others? Don't be shy. We're actually a pretty friendly bunch.
This is my 3rd time. You think I'd be okay by now?
Well, we've treated you okay so far. I mean, you know.
My name is Amy Kripe, and I live at 372 White Birch Drive. I am new to the school district, and I have a student in the high school, the middle school, and pretty soon Guilford Lakes. And again, I'm also in favor of the art issue as well. And I just want to say that you stated that physical and social and emotional wellness was a focus of the school year this year, and that art helps with this. Creativity is a wellness practice. So whatever you can do to help increase in any time with art would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. John Mayo, 199 Village Pond Road in Guilford. And I'm also here as the president of GHS Swim, which is our booster club for the swimming team. You guys have known me well enough. I think 3 or 4 years ago is when we started this whole process in front of this board in this very meeting. And we now have a successful 21-member girls swim team. The boys are still co-oping with Brantford. If you recall back in November, I was here with 2 very specific requests as we move forward with this budget. I was asking for an assistant coach for our swim team. A year ago in our current budget, a crew assistant coach job was added. And on that budget line, I believe last year, it was mentioned as a safety issue. And I kind of feel the same way with our swim program. Upwards of 21 girls in the pool now, hoping to add to that. There's a big pipeline of girls coming up in the 7th and 8th grade class. Having that second person as an official member as an assistant swim coach is needed, and I'm wondering, Dr. Freeman, if that was put into this current proposal, because the last year it was noted as a line item for crew, and I did not see that as a line item this year. It was not broken down specifically.
There's no additional coaches in this budget.
Any reason for that, or is it just?
We met with Mr. Jarvis. We went over all of the additional requests that have been made, and we felt that the staffing levels were appropriate for the numbers and for the opportunities that we offered at this time.
Okay. Then the second request I had was for transportation, and I know that that is also vaguely written into the budget. It's kind of put in simply as, actually we have a decrease this year in transportation for the athletic side of things. For the high school, it went from 132 to 130,000. Is the swim team included in the transportation for the high school?
No additional transportation over what is in this year's budget, no.
So I guess what I'm asking is equitable. I believe that the GHS girls swim team is the only team that has to pay for its own busing, including the boys. The boys swim team, they are co-op, as you well know that. And the Branford athletic director reached out to Mr. Jarvis. Mr. Jarvis took money from walk-up ticket sales for football and wrote Branford a check to pay for the boys' busing.
Mr. Bloss, I can answer. I don't know if you want to get into conversations at the time.
Well, I think it's fine.
I'm just asking for,
Yeah.
I'd like it to be equitable. And again, go ahead.
So when we added swimming to the program,
Yes.
it was made clear that we would add monies for the coaching and for some base expenses. There was literally a dollar amount that was identified.
Correct.
And then the suggestion was that the booster organization or fundraising could occur to offset those expenses.
Okay.
And so I would assume that in time, swimming will grow and take more of the budgeted dollars. But at this time, I think the program is in its third year. It is
Correct.
very successful, but considering the budget numbers that I put up, I did not make any additional contribution beyond that initial agreement in this year's budget.
This is sort of the
Go ahead.
same, well, I mean, you know, one of the either costs or benefits of being around for a long time is that it's actually following a fairly predictable pattern.
Agreed.
You know, the crew, hockey probably was the
very
first
much
one.
so.
And hockey receives $20,000 for their ice time as part of the budget every year moving
Right.
forward, which is great.
And you know, but I mean, hockey crew and swimming have all kind of followed the same
Yeah.
model, if you will, starting off with a relatively low board investment and
Sure.
then increasing over time.
And I realize that, and that's why I stand before you at every meeting, because 3 years ago, we were at ground zero.
How many boys are
The boys team currently, I believe, has 11 Guilford swimmers. It's mostly Guilford swimmers.
We
to
have
be
more
honest with
Guilford
you.
swimmers than
More
Branford
Guilford
swimmers
than, we
currently.
actually have picked up kids from North Branford and from East Haven to go along with a very minimal amount at Branford. I would not be surprised. I need to talk to our coach again, but I think that there's going to be a co-op opportunity for the boys one more time, which would be a 2-year contract.
Right now, Branford is relying on us to continue the
Correct,
co-op
absolutely.
Is that right?
relationship so that they can have a program. And East Haven, and you're correct, one other program are practicing and
Yeah.
performing as teams of one with us as well.
That's true. But I guess the problem with the transportation is that that's a significant amount of our budget. The pool time, we understand. There's no pool at the high school. We need a place to swim. We are going to rent, and my pool money has gone up. We went from $10 a lane to $15 a lane this year. With extra swimmers in the pool, we're renting more lanes to swim. So that money went from $3,100 to $6,200 just in 1 year. So that's almost doubled. If the transportation money is there as well, I'm just asking for a little bit more help, and I want it to be equitable. And I'm not coming at this as a boys versus girls thing, because I've got a son who's a 7th grade swimmer. He'll be on the high school team in 2 years. So I'm not trying to pit boys versus girls, but I would like it to be somewhat equitable if the athletic director can reach into football ticket walk-up sales and cut a check to Branford for their bus payments. And we're writing a check for $5,100 right back to Mr. Jarvis to pay for the transportation. I'm just hoping that our program has grown to the point that we're looking to build it up with some more backing from the board and from the Board of Finance. Again, we wouldn't be here without you guys. We know that. It's been fun seeing our girls in the pool. It's been a blast seeing them compete. getting better with every single swim that's out there. There were a number of girls who wanted to come here tonight. They're midterms.
Midterms tomorrow.
Right?
We would be disappointed.
I asked them to stay home and study instead. It's better for them to than to try to make the point that I'm here to make.
We support that.
Can I ask you how many days a week they're practicing? That they would need transportation?
They are at the pool, well, depending on your meets, 5 to 6 days a week. We did cut back on our transportation costs because you were graciously allowing us to pick up the girls from the YMCA. Your rules state that because we are leaving from the town of Guilford to another town for our practices, that we need to take the bus. So that is where we're incurring a lot of these expenses, because we need to take the bus from the high school to the YMCA every single day for practice. Just asking for a little bit more help, and if that can be built in, you know, maybe that number can go up from, what was it, Dr. Freeman, 660 million, 963 to maybe 60 million, 969. Mr. Ailes, that would be okay to throw a little bit more our way. But again, thank you for all of your support.
We'll certainly take a look.
And if we can continue to try to build this, we're trying to build it the right way. We are. And we want our booster club to fund the things that, you know, put a record board up on the wall in the gym and things along those lines. But anything that can be added would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. We will certainly keep it in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to hear that the program is doing well.
Yeah, they're doing great.
And the crew, as I gather, doing well in terms of numbers of participants.
Very much so.
You know, hockey has certainly been very successful.
I just had one quick question
Yeah.
with the girls' swim team.
Yes.
How are they getting to meets and things like that? Are they also using the bus?
We do use the bus transportation. We're paying for, you know, actually, I've not received this year's money or invoice, that's the word I should be using, from Mr. Jarvis yet. I usually meet with him in May after we have a big fundraiser, GCTV shred bag events. Okay, we're going to have our shred bag event as well, which raised a significant amount of money for us. But we do take the bus to all of our meets. We did host a number of meets this year, so we're hoping that our transportation money was down a little bit. We had 6 meets this year at the Y as opposed to only 2 home meets last year. So there should be some offset at that point. But again, I just want it to be equitable. I want to find out what's going on with that boys' money down the road as well. I think that was still kept in there despite the co-op, so we'll see where that goes. Anything else?
Thank you.
We're good? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, others coming up?
Hi, Christine Macaluso, 261 Dunlock Road, and I'm just going to be very short to say that I'm in favor of full-time art education at the elementary levels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we should just at least know, if we were to add 2 full-time art teachers, what would the fully salary and medical benefits, what's the approximate cost?
Fully loaded, you're talking if the teachers come in at the first year of experience or first or second year of experience, you're looking at probably $120,000 to $140,000 salary and benefit for 2 full-time positions.
Ms. Trudeau nods her head yes, so I
noticed
that. No, okay, but I understand it's not so. It's as well. There's money issues, but there's also time issues.
Correct.
We can talk.
This
about
is
that.
as much a scheduling concern as it is a budgeting concern. That's correct.
Right. Okay. We can talk about that. Others?
Hi, I'm Kara Carell. I live at 162 Mulberry Point Road, and I'm also here to advocate for a full-time art teacher. Again, I think we talked a lot about social and emotional well-being, and I think that's a huge part of it, is having other outlets other than just solely academic. So I think it's really important to find the time somewhere for that. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, finding the time is, you really have hit on a significant issue. Let me just ask, how many elementary parents are here? About 10-ish. One of the proposals that came up was to add time to the elementary school day, and before anybody says, what is the board thinking about? No, that wasn't our proposal, but that was a proposal. So would people be interested in a longer elementary school day if there were more art instruction? Or
By how much?
how much more art instruction? The question was by how much, and so.
How much art instruction do you want?
Don't know.
Yeah, at recess too, I'd be all about it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
But 30 minutes over the course, it wouldn't be,
A day, per day?
Yeah.
Well, that would be the question. I mean, you know, you could do it in any combination, right? I mean, you could do, if there were, now, let me just tell you, we are not going to lengthen the school day for this upcoming year. There's, you know, anybody who's been in Guilford long enough to know that we don't do things like, you don't surprise people, right? And so, but you know, we're sensitive to the fact that the elementary school is a short, rather short day, which means, you know, that there are lots of good things: recess, music, numerosity, literacy, art. None of those are bad things.
To answer your question, I think we should definitely explore it.
Okay.
I don't know that we all really verbally gave our feedback to your question, but no, I think it's absolutely worth exploring.
Okay,
Then,
then, yeah, I mean, that's way past what we can do in this budget year, but,
Oh,
you know, that
absolutely,
is, you know, that is a, you know, the kids get out of elementary school already pretty late, and so there are transportation issues, obviously, with the 3 waves and the 4 elementary schools. And we're sensitive to kids not getting home after dark, say, right? I mean, that's certainly a value, but, you know, this is one of these areas where not every value is going to be able to be treated, you know, with exactly the same amount of weight. It just can't be done.
I don't know how true this is, but the thing I tend to hear is that there's a lot of queue time, kids waiting in lines for buses at the elementary level, where I tend to think art, a little extra recess, what better time than to have the kids lined up doing another learning experience?
Well, I think
I don't
something.
know if that's true, right?
Yeah.
Some of these things could be rumors,
I think
it's hard to tell.
I think my impression is that it varies greatly among buses. Between, you know, there's some buses that get to the elementary schools right when the bell gets out, and there's some buses that don't get to the elementary schools for 15 or 20 minutes. So,
but you get where I'm trying to.
No, I understand. Yeah. No, that's fine. Look, we may be in an area where we have to be a little bit creative.
Yeah, sure.
And because, you know, I don't know, do any of the elementary principals want to can you maybe give us just a 2-minute synopsis of what a typical day looks like for an elementary? Mrs. McCarthy, you're the senior principal. Could you?
So language arts is probably.
Why don't you come up here if you can? So it's. Aren't you glad
Paula.
Aren't you glad you showed up?
We had not asked you to prepare for this.
Paula McCarthy, principal at Melissa Jones. So let me kind of run through a typical day, maybe like 2nd grade level. Language arts is about 2 hours a day easily. Math, 90 minutes a day. Community work, choose love, SEL work, probably an additional 20 minutes. Science and social studies, about 45 minutes. Recess is 25 minutes a day. Lunch is 25 minutes a day. There's typically a little motor break in there, an additional 45 minutes of writing. Some of that can be integrated in the social studies and science area. So that's pretty much our day, quick.
And some days we'd have music, obviously.
Of course, specials.
Specials.
Thank you. So I'm thinking about the teacher schedule, but of course, specials. So music is 60 minutes a week. Spanish is 90 minutes a week. Art varies from 30 to 40 minutes a week per student. And PE is 60 minutes a week. So the kids have a full day. They are tuckered out. Our teachers are tuckered out. Yeah.
Well, and nobody thinks that more art is a bad thing, but
No.
when we're talking,
The kids love art.
yeah.
Yeah. Our teachers love teaching art. Our teachers, so yeah, we love it.
We've talked a little bit at some of the meetings about how art is being integrated into some of the other areas. Could you just talk about that a little bit?
So elementary school teachers can more easily integrate the visual arts versus dance, music, and theater, or PE. Sometimes I see it integrated in world language. When we talk about culture and art, I see it integrated bits with writing. Children often illustrate what they're going to write about. They love to read graphic novels. Also, sometimes in science, with design, devising how to do some STEM activities. There's design and planning and illustrations prior to, putting an activity together. And I also sometimes think in math. Third graders design bridges, fourth graders design playgrounds, second graders design like little roller coasters as part of math units. So there's some opportunities for children to think about how things look. Kids love to draw. They will choose it if it's indoor recess like it was today. They will choose to draw, to tell stories, and to illustrate them. Yeah. Anything
Okay.
else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Okay.
Anybody have
Thank
any other questions? Okay, that's helpful. I'd just like to have some.
I get nervous as a mom of special ed students that need the free play time, because I know at our school, we have the recess time, and we have amazing teachers that identify when they need those sensory breaks. So I think as you are looking at places where you can take time, I want to make sure that we keep in mind that there's little kiddos that need those breaks to get out and either just walk around or have an additional recess. I want to make sure that those are still available to teachers if we are going to look at adding art into the day, because that, I think, is equally important for everyone.
No, that's fair, and in everything that Mrs. McCarthy just said,
Yeah.
those are all good things, right?
Absolutely.
But there are lots of good things. So we just got to try to figure out the best we can.
Why is language arts 2 hours? I'm new, if this is a block schedule. I'm new.
It's not a blind. Well, go ahead. Do you want
My
to?
daughter's going to be in kindergarten, so I'm new to the schedule.
Simply because of the complexity and the importance of reading and writing. Reading and writing is the tool into everything else. The simplistic old cliche about schools is that you learn to read from from kindergarten to fourth grade, and then you read to learn for the rest of your education. It is simply the importance, the complexity of both the reading and the writing, and needing to dedicate that amount of time to it.
Right. And they do both the reading and the writing in the 2 hour
Yes,
language arts.
yeah, that represents both reading and writing instruction, practice, and skill building.
Great.
Speaking and listening.
Thank you.
That's also
That's exactly right. Speaking and listening are parts of that as well, all the language arts. Thank you, Paul.
In terms of extending the day, I know what took place last year, we started school late, and that shuffling and the buses and looking at all the different times, and even considering flipping elementary was talked about. And again, this wouldn't be for this upcoming budget, but everyone I know, elementary school kids, all of them wake up very early, and so I don't think that pushing out to a 4 o'clock dismissal is necessarily the answer, but they're up early. My kids are up for hours before school starts,
Well,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, give Bill a break here a
No, that's
second.
fine.
We sat in this room 4 years ago when we first started discussion of school start times. And I will tell you, I came to this table expecting to hear generally high school parents saying, mixed, yes, no, maybe, but elementary school parents saying, hey, our kids are up early, and I will tell you that elementary school parents were split, high school parents were split, middle school parents were split. We had a parent of elementary school's kids say to us, I can barely get my 3 kids out by the time we have to get the bus anyway. Please don't try to make me do that earlier. And we had parents like yourself saying they're up early, so there's no universal feeling about that, for sure, which was one of the many struggles over a 4-year period of thinking about school start times. And there were additional complications, which I'm happy to talk to you another time. I won't take up this time about considering a complete switch of high school and elementary.
They're devastating impacts on high school extracurriculars. If the high school is getting out at 3:30, doesn't work.
Yeah, so really, I mean, I don't even know if a teacher contract can, I'm looking at Dr. Freeman, can accommodate a longer elementary school day. I mean, this is a very kind of a thought exercise more than anything at the moment, this conversation, but I think if we're looking at extending it, it's not going to go into the morning. It's going to go into the afternoon.
Well, I mean, there's no alternative.
There's no, right, so be aware that any possibility of that is, it's not going to happen earlier in the day.
And also, I see the integration that the Melissa Jones teacher, my child's in 4th grade, I've seen what they've done and how things are integrated, but it's nominal. I mean, it sounds great, but what's actually happening is fairly nominal. And I also feel like the classroom teachers, they're trained to do what they're doing, the language arts, the math. A lot of them are not artists. They don't have that same background to truly integrate. We're not asking them to teach Spanish. We're not asking the classroom teachers to do PE. We're not asking them to do any of these other things, but we want them to integrate art, and I don't think that all classroom teachers feel comfortable doing that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments? Questions?
Karen Moriarty, Spruce Hill Drive.
That one doesn't work, so forget that
Sorry.
one. That's just,
Sorry, I should take that away.
It's just in the way.
that's a decoration.
I feel really bad about that now.
It's not a particularly effective decoration, but it nonetheless is.
I'm in full support of art at the elementary schools, but I'm really here for supporting more monies for swimming, of course. Definitely, assistant coach is needed. The financing for that, with a lot of kids, as John said, coming up from 7th and 8th grade. We have a lot of year-round swimmers in this school who are coming, and we knew if we built it that they would come, and they're coming. And, you know, transportation would be great also. Our bus got to pick us up and take us to our state championships this year, so they had to pile into the coaches.
Imagine our soccer team not getting to state championships.
Yeah.
Our girls swim team did not make it to the states because we had to take cars to get them there. So we paid for a bus that didn't show up.
We did. But that's all.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Yep, be sure to sign in.
I'm just going to write this down.
That's fine, no, please. I mean, your recording secretary is smiling. She is very happy to.
I'm here to request funds for swim, and I'm going to turn to our president for some statistics, if I may, not to put him on the spot. My name's Dorothea Calabrese, and I moved here 3 years ago from another state. The swim program, when it started, I could not wait to get my daughter in, who has never, ever done a sport in her life. Has the coordination of me, which Grace is my middle name, so I'm very happy that she's doing something. And the camaraderie amongst these young ladies is amazing. But most importantly, I found that they push each other academically. So my little freshman, my 9th grader who went into 10th, turned to me and says, I'm going and I want AP Bio, I want high honors, English, and I'm sitting there going, what? And the young ladies on this swim team study together. So in and above sports, they have their own network of studying. They go to each other's houses. These are a lot of them maybe only do swim, but if I don't know if we have the information of how many are in that high honor level, that advanced level. I have to say 50% or more, and I'll get you statistics tomorrow on this, but I found it to be amazing. Now, I do have, to balance out, as most parents, a son who, when we moved here, said, I want to play football. I went, what? So I have that balance of the person who can play any athletic sports and the one who goes more towards the academics. And the swim, again, is unbelievable. If we can possibly shift some of this funding to help these girls and boys, would be a tremendous help to parents as well. I love to fundraise as much as anybody else. We try our best to do what we can, and I think we're pretty successful for the short term that we are, and we're a small group of people. But if we can increase that fund, can we maybe have some additional help in brainstorming and using our artsy part of our brain, plugging in this side, because we utilize it, right, all the time, to maybe then shift it to where we can help fund that. So again, it's hard to take that stone and try to get a little bit more from it, and I appreciate what you do. But if we can, I'd like to see what we can do. And if there's any additional information showing how strong it is academically to help support that, I'd like to see if we can present that as well, if that would help the causes. Please, by all means. On a second part, I've been here for 3 years, and I really, as a parent, cannot believe how much we have to struggle, or all of you, not us, have to struggle to ask for more money for teachers. Like, I can't believe this wonderful town is still questioning just the amount of money that is needed for retirements and benefits and medical for these people to do what they do every day to get our kids to college and beyond. From every level, I have not met so many amazing teachers here. And again, I've moved 14 times through my life. So I've kind of seen a little bit. And this town is unbelievable. So I really do hope that when I come back again for this budget meeting next year, because I'm here a few years, I'm vested, I'm settled for, at least till they get to college, that I don't have to hear that anymore. And if there's anything as parents we can help, this is kind of like crazy.
Funny
that
you
we
mention
have to
that.
Encourage your friends to vote and support.
I mean, really, I can't, I mean,
So the single,
I'm not an educator by far, but
probably, what's the turnout in presidential elections in Guilford? 90%? 85? Something like that, right? Something, people would walk over broken glass to vote for president, even though statistically, in an electoral college system, your vote for president probably has less of an impact than any other vote that you do, just as a practical matter. The single vote you have that has arguably the largest impact on your daily life is the vote in the third week in April, or whenever it is this year, on the budget. It affects police, it affects fire, it affects roads, it affects parks, it affects teachers, it affects buildings, it affects all of that. Right. We get somewhere between 15 and 20% turnout. So when Dr. Chris Moore used to be on the board, and he was very technologically savvy, he would actually, I guess I can say this, he's not on anymore. But when parents came up to talk about, wanting this or wanting that, he'd look them up and say, didn't vote.
I like that, though. That's pretty good.
He would nudge me and say, didn't vote. So, the most important thing you can do is actually get out and vote. 80% of parents don't vote. It's a little hard for me to understand, but good. We don't have that program up there.
To be clear, it is public information that you voted. It is not public information how you voted, but let's just be clear that Dr. Moore was doing something completely legitimate. Lest anybody else thinks otherwise.
Right, but it's so true what you're saying, Bill, because all of you coming out, it's so wonderful. It's so good to hear the personal reasons behind why you're coming out here. But and this is very important and effective, but the most effective thing you can do is to get your friends and your neighbors to come and vote. And I really believe it would be the best education anyone could have. I can't tell you how many people I meet that don't even realize that we vote every year on our budget.
Well, here's my, I was sitting back I was listening to everything. And I said, how many students do we have in the school system? It's not a test, but how many
It's
students do we have in the school
3,200?
system, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and how many teachers? So if you take that, of the cost per child, if you took that child and you put them in a daycare situation, right? So I know I paid a few years ago $25,000 a year. I've worked full-time, I'm a single parent, and I commuted into Manhattan. I paid $25,000 a year. You know, we all know it was only taxed for $5,000, just saying. But, so with that, even if each parent, if they just knew how, I mean, this is just mathematically not making sense to me why we're not even standing up. So again, I think I'm preaching to the choir right now.
Probably.
But anyway, I just thought I'd say, wow. I can't
Well, and
believe
the other thing we usually talk about with the Board of Finance is we spend, our spending per student is somewhere, there are 169 towns in the state, we're somewhere usually in the 70s, high 70s. So basically average. But then the achievement reports that we get from the state, and this is not just standardized scores, but it's things like art availability and music availability and extracurriculars and athletics and a bunch of other things. We're in the top 5 in the state. So it's you know, it's a little frustrating, you know, when we talk about being efficient. You know, we think the district is pretty efficient and has pretty good results, but then 80-something% of the people don't vote.
Well, Mr. Bloss, to your point, last year with a final budget proposal of a 1.4% increase, that's a full point lower than we are tonight as you receive the draft from the administrative team. Our budget only passed by approximately 300 votes. We very nearly failed last year, and our budget request was just a little over half of what we're requesting right now here tonight. So, right, it is, of the communities that outperform us, Darien, Greenwich, New Canaan, if we had their per student spending, we would have an additional $13 million in the budget that we present in front of you tonight. A lot of these concerns would be lesser concerns if we were talking about $73 million tonight and not $60 million tonight.
Can I ask a question probably of Mr. Mayo, just to get a little bit of a better idea about the buses? So
Yes.
if you, I know it's probably variable because I know you said you have more home meets this year
Correct.
than usual, but is there any way you can estimate how much money
I
it
can
would
tell,
be?
I can give you the exact number from last year.
So if we were
that
to,
helps.
if hypothetically you were
Yes.
to get money for your buses to take you to meets.
Yes. Well, that's complicated. That is complicated
Yeah.
because it's also that one-way ride to practice every day.
Okay.
So that adds to it. And we realize that, you know, Mr. Bloss's daughter is not taking a bus to practice for cross-country, but she is taking a bus to the meets for cross-country.
Well, and my point is, when you're talking
But the
about-
point is that my number last year for transportation was $5,586.81. Again, I have not received this year's number from Mr. Jarvis, and it's also a new transportation company, if I'm correct. So I don't know how much money would that change things for the athletic side of things with
It's
busing?
not going down.
No. I understand that. Now, again, Ted, we did have more home meets, so
Yeah.
we were not, you know,
That's
a
what
bus
I'm
is not sitting in a parking lot for 3 hours waiting for our girls to finish their meet and then come back. So we're not paying that extra money for that.
So that's for 5 to 6 days of bus transportation?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Well, because I'm just trying to figure out, because I appreciate your, talking
Yeah.
about equitability.
Right.
And a lot of it's pool time, and that doesn't occur.
Pool
with some
time's
of
not,
the-
we're not asking for that because we know we didn't
Right,
have a
but I'm
pool to start
talking
with. And our suits, our equipment, that's not coming into play. We're not, really, the two requests that came for Dr. Freeman for this year was the assistant coach because of our numbers, because of the safety issues, sort of the way that you handled things with crew last year, and also our transportation. And if we could fundraise for the rest, we can certainly cover the rest of our expenses, continue to grow this program the way we wanted to grow it, and this is important, be ready for that boys team when they're no longer co-oping and Branford's not paying the bill. We want the boys team as part of us. We want that stipend for our coaches to come from the Guilford program. We want to build this program the right way, and my son's a 7th grader. There's a ton of 8th grade boys. Mrs. Cohen's sons are coming up from that program as well. So, we're trying to build this the right way, and then, again, I didn't want to sound confrontational before, and I apologize, Dr. Friedman, if I was, but I just, I came to this board 3 years ago fighting for this. I've seen the fruits of our labor. These girls are awesome, and they're having a great time. Don't have a win yet, but they're doing awesome things. Their times are much better. They're having an awesome time. They're working together in the classrooms, and it's great.
So my point in asking the question, which was speaking to being eligible,
yes,
and that taking the pool out of the equation because we can't fix that.
Correct.
Not every team gets 5 to 6 days
Agreed.
of transportation.
Agreed.
So you would accept some money towards transportation.
Yes, absolutely.
To be, okay.
Right, and again, the equitable part of it was, having the boys team with walk-up ticket money from football, that hurt. When I heard that, and I had that meeting with Mr. Jarvis, that hurt. Because we have 21 families who wrote a check last year for $14,249.33 back to the high school.
And I apologize that I don't know, I haven't looked in a while. An assistant coach would be?
I think our number last year for crew was, I want to say $3,150.
It's around $3,000. The stipend is in the teacher's contract. It changes annually, but that's the right ballpark.
I believe it's about there.
Yeah.
Okay,
so I think the stipend was 25 plus then your expenses on top of that.
That was it?
Okay,
thanks.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori LaTorsa, Riverview Drive. Just to change topic, I'm just standing up here. You guys know I talk about special ed, not only asking for money, but in support of all the work because you have made the investment. And I know that's a large number that's up there if you guys see it or if the Board of Finance sees it, but I also think it would be dramatically higher if the investment hadn't been made and you guys don't continue to make it. So it looks like a large number. I don't think it's just special ed. I think tuition goes across things, but I want you to know that the investment you guys have made has left a lot of kids back in this district. If you even show up at one of the unified sports things or the banquets, you'll know that all the kids in this district benefit from having these kids here and working with it. And I just want to say thank you. And if you have any questions on that budget and you need support for it, you'll have a lot of parents there to do it. Because again, I think while it looks large, I think it easily could be 3 times as much if we hadn't invested in the program around that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I also think we should have art.
How do you feel about the swim coach?
Hey, if you could teach my daughter to swim, I'm all for it either way.
Others? Well, if not, Ms. Beckett, you're just watching? Okay. Do board members have questions tonight? We also have tomorrow night, obviously, and then we meet again a week from tonight.
I think it's important, this issue of parent voting on the referendum. I mean, let me see if I can kind of lay it out for you. There are 1,000 no votes every year. I mean, even if we had, this polar inversion, we would have 1,000 no votes from people who this is their second home and they don't have kids in the system, people who are retired and don't have kids in the system, and people who are just curmudgeons and don't care. But and statistically, there's this 1,000 votes. And if our turnout is less than 20%, the 1,000 votes is going to carry. And it was, 3 years ago we got...
It was 3 or 4 years ago our first request failed.
The budget got turned down, and then very drastic things happened. And so, as Mr. Bloss says, for an election in which people are used to voting, we get 80% turnout. And in most of the school districts, I mean, most of the school elementary groups, we've studied this, and the percentage of parents who vote is way lower than 50%. I mean, they just assume that this is going to happen. It isn't going to happen. You've got to get organized. You've got to go out and get the other parents to come out and vote. And if they choose to vote no, that's their right. But if they, you know, if they have children in the school and they come out to vote, we're pretty comfortable that we'll get a reasonable result. But if everybody stays home, believe me, these 1,000 negative voters are going to carry the day. And then we're not talking about an increase. And we're not talking about maybe taking $100,000 off the budget. We're talking about taking $500,000 off the budget and doing some really drastic things. And we just don't, as somebody who's moved to town myself, I find it extraordinary that the turnout is as low as it is, and especially among the school parents. It's just amazing. But that's the single most important thing that the parents can do in terms of funding the schools going forward.
So, and also show up at the Board of Finance meeting, by the way, because the board, if nobody shows up at the Board of Finance, when is the Board of Finance meetings? Do we have that scheduled?
Got me on
Oh.
March 7th? No, the presentations by Board of Selectmen and Board of Education, February 14th, Thursday.
That's right. Valentine's Day? Seriously?
I don't make the date. I don't make the date.
Great date.
Yeah, so February 14th, and then it's the first Tuesday is the public presentations. That's the Tuesday, I think it's March, someone could probably look that up, 4th?
The 14th is just a regular Board of Finance meeting where we present. The public hearing is much, is at the community center, is the conversation much more so.
Right. Mike, you can hear me, right? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. That's why I'm talking loud.
Well, actually, can you just come up here and just run through the date and the process?
Tuesday, March 5th, Linda?
I don't think I've ever gotten in front of everybody on this meeting, but
It's okay.
Tuesday, March 5th.
Mike, you need the dates?
Mike Ailes, Chairman of the Board of Finance, everyone. Yeah, so the Thursday, February 14th is a regular meeting of the Board of Finance. Typically, our meetings are on the third Monday of the month. Because of the way that the referendum shapes up this year, with the vote, it goes backwards. So all the dates are basically set back. So we've had it as early as, I think, like February 11th, and we've had it as late as like February 21st before. So this has happened before where it fell on the 14th. Yes, there's some unfortunate date coinciding there, but, and then Laura, you were saying is it Tuesday, March 4th? 5th, okay. So on the 5th is again another set of presentations, but then there's a public hearing. So you are allowed, wait a minute, the first, yes, you're allowed to speak before and after on that one. Right. And then Thursday the 6th is the first workshop. That's, I'm sorry, March 7th, Thursday. Is the first workshop where the Board of Finance basically talks about where we want to go with the budget. And hopefully we try to come to a conclusion that night to send a budget out to the voters. There's a second meeting on the Monday after, which would then be 11th, thank you. I knew I was going to get some help. On March 11th. And that is a second workshop in case we don't come to a conclusion or a decision on Thursday before the first workshop. What I learned last year is that it's not always that you can't come to a conclusion, it's that you get a snowstorm. And I won't throw too much into this, but yeah, we ended up trying to have the meeting and a lot of people didn't show up and it became a real problem.
So we ended up moving it and having the decision and the deliberation on the Monday after. Unfortunately, I planned to be out of town and I could not change it, so I missed my first budget decision there. So didn't make any plans this year. Yeah, those are the dates that we're looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just so people understand, after the Board of Education votes on a budget, we just bring it forward to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance has the authority to do anything that it wants to it. It can can reduce it by a number, but cannot tell us how to reduce it. But can remove money in any amount effectively, and so it is important for people to attend and make sure the Board of Finance hears. A lot of times we have a lot of parents come to these meetings and then nobody goes to the Board of Finance meetings, so in any event. Okay, are there any other, yeah, please.
Now I understand it's February 7th, you guys vote on the proposed budget, is that correct?
Maybe.
Potentially the 4th, not the 7th.
We're scheduled right now to vote on the 4th. However, if we're still working things through, we can always vote on the 11th, which would be a regular business meeting. It'll either be the 4th or the 11th.
And that will be made public just
Oh, sure.
in meeting minutes in the next...
Oh, I'm sure we'll put it out on the listserv.
Once the board finalizes it, we will post it on our website, and it will remain on our website until the town identifies the date, formally identifies the date for referendum, at which point we're no longer allowed by election law to maintain that information on our website, but we will publicize it as soon as the board has finalized the budget by placing it on our website.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, anybody from the board? Well, then I guess we have another meeting scheduled tomorrow, so is there a motion to adjourn this evening?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
See you in 23 hours.
No, less than that.
That's less than that.